Welcome everyone to another episode of IT Visionaries, and today we have the VP of User Experience at RingCentral, Michael Peachy. Michael, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
All right out the gate, RingCentral, what is it and what does it do?
So RingCentral builds and markets products that let people connect at a distance. So, for employees of organizations of all sizes, 2 people to 200,000 people, if you need to be sending team messages back and forth, video meetings, screen shares, webinars, phone calls, file sharing, whatever, we've got tools that all integrate together and help everybody stay connected, which has been super important, of course. As we talk to you now, August 2021, since about March of last year, communicating at a distance and being connected to people has been top of mind, I think, for a lot of us.
And in your role at RingCentral, user experience, one of the things that we commonly hear, you can say they're misconceptions, you can say they're real, is that enterprise software is not as easy to use. I tend to agree. I've used a lot of tools in my career. They definitely tend to be a little more bulky. I don't know how best to describe it, but they have more features usually too. So you have to account for those things. Give us an idea of how user experience is changing in the enterprise world, because there's just more demands all the time of software in functionality. But now the new one is with we were talking to some team members or previous guests about the Great Resignation, and like people's toolkits are now like starting to matter to people where they choose to work. Like the actual tech stack. Like if I feel like the tech stack is too, I don't know, it's not for me, I'll actually choose to leave, which I couldn't imagine was a decision factor in people's jobs, but it sounds like it's becoming that way, or it is now that way. I'd love to hear your perspective on what's happening in enterprise software, how UX plays a role, and what the demands are on the enterprise side for UX.
Awesome question. So first, I got to say that if you feel that many enterprise software tools are hard to use, you're not confused. It just means you're paying attention.
Appreciate it.
And we could go on and on and on about why that is. But basically it's because every organization's got bigger dreams than they've got engineers and designers and people to build stuff. So, we got a backlog of about 1,000 things on our products, and I know everybody else does too. And if you started reading that list, you'd be like, yeah, and that one, and that one. I want that one too. And be like, okay, great. Now we got to put them in order for you. That's a big thing that we worry about as a design team, as a user experience team, right? How do we give you enterprise grade software with security and reliability and scalability and stability and everything else, but give you that consumer class experience that you're used to, where it's you don't have to go to a training seminar to figure out how to listen to a song on your iPhone or send your mom a picture of your new cat, right? Like it just works. So that's the balance that we're always making. Enterprise grade where you need it, but consumer class where you want it.
Yeah, I remember. So I'll give you a frame of reference so you know where I'm coming from. My first gig out of college that involved software, I was working at an e-learning company making WBTs and stuff for enterprise software. So like Oracle Financials, Oracle CCMB, PeopleSoft. And I remember we used this tool to teach people how to do simple things like, if you were in HR and PeopleSoft, you were going to create a job requisition. It took it was like a 100-step process potentially, which I was like, this is bananas. Like this is just this one tool, so you're in this constant battle, which is you got to be feature rich. And there's also this battle of, it's got to be easier to use. Like you said, consumer class products are really driving, I guess, what's the best way to say it? The expectation, the customer, the user expectation is like, this is going to be easy to use. Talk about how that weighs. Like, how do you guys go about evaluating how to meet these demands? Because it is a massive challenge. When I think about an enterprise product, like what I'm talking about, like the amount of fields and options that are there, they have to be there because, of course, that's what the job requires, and the job requires it. Yeah. So how do you make that elegant, easy to use, simple to navigate, all those things that you have to deal with?
Well, I think the number one thing is spending time with users, spending time with customers. So we've got a global design team in this organization. I got about 100 people all around the world whose job is to design software that works well for the users. We've got a small army of product managers who are spending time with customers and users. What features do you need? What don't you need? What's getting in your way? And there's a lot of research that shows that the number one factor for success in a design team is how much time they spend with customers versus how much time do they spend designing stuff for themselves. So with that, we can get a good roadmap of what goes in and what doesn't. And as you pointed out, you hit a form somewhere in an enterprise software and there's 35 things you got to fill out and only 4 of them matter to you. The problem is that a different form mattered to somebody else over here, or a big company wants this and a small company wants that. Financial services wants this, healthcare wants that, and you're trying to build something that kind of threads the needle for all of them. So a lot of times, like the saying, features check in, but they don't check out, and that's where stuff gets kind of bulky. So our goal is to make stuff as usable as possible. And we talk about approachability. Can you walk up to the UI and figure it out? And that would be the goal. But a lot of things often require training, right? Like you wouldn't want somebody to try to design a jet so that some dude could just walk up to the cockpit and figure it out. Like you kind of want your pilot to go through a lot of training and really figure, learn what they're doing. So, tools have got a balance between those two.
So in your experience, you made a good point where if you're sitting down with people, it sounds like you'll observe. I think it's the best way to describe it. You'll observe behaviors and patterns potentially that you otherwise wouldn't ever know about. What have you uncovered? What are some interesting nuggets you've uncovered in doing these user meetings where you're actually sitting down and watching them use your products? Because I think it's been said by many different people in many different ways, but like we as humans are just really terrible at evaluating ourselves. Like we can't describe what we want. We can't describe what we do. We're awful at describing what we saw. I've seen like on TV shows where like they have people witness a crime and then listen to the descriptions. Like people can't even explain what they just saw. And
so, 30 seconds ago. Yeah. Yeah. And they were told to pay attention and they still couldn't do it.
Yeah. And so I was we've had some guests on IT Visionaries talk about how the problem with user surveys, while they are meaningful, a lot of they made a comment about like, hey, a lot of people don't really know what they're saying, even in their user surveys. So it's tough to figure out what's noise and what's signal. I'd love to hear some of the things that you've observed that you've uncovered doing physical one-to-one meetings, watching people use products.
So one of the key things that you're getting at there is the problem with asking people what they want, because people, they either don't know what they want or they think they know what they want. And, a lot of times it doesn't really match reality. When we do those kinds of surveys you're talking about, we ask for specific observable behaviors. So, if you go and you ask a bunch of people, on a scale of 1 to 5, how often do you floss your teeth? You're going to get a lot of 4s and 5s on that list. If you go ask that same group of people, or even better, observe them, and you say, when was the last time you flossed your teeth? Or you get them to keep a log and you go and you look at the log, you'll discover that, you got some 4s and 5s, but maybe you got more 1s, 2s, and 3s than you'd want. So when we ask people about our products, if we go in there and say, hey, would you like this feature or this feature or this feature in your next video call? A lot of people are going to say, sure, yeah. You could even ask them, like, put them in order. And they'd say, okay, I want them B, C, A. And like, terrific. You're like, okay, everybody wants B. So you go in there and you build that, and then nobody uses it. And you go back and you're like, but hey, you said you wanted this feature in the product, but I notice you're not actually using it. And people don't know why. So what we want to do is go in there and actually observe what they're doing. Watch them set up a meeting, watch people struggle with connecting a calendar to a meeting. How do you make sure everybody's in the meeting? And then from there, you can figure out what they're really doing.
When there's a new rise of products that are like product driven products to help product managers, UX, UI. They claim to do different things like pixel tracking, data logging, every single thing a person's doing, like where their cursors move to. I've even seen some companies claim they can sense where like my eyes are, like where how do I observe things? I'm curious, have you gotten a chance to use those products? Do you find them useful in helping you identify opportunities and solutions for your product? Have those products replaced the observations, or do you still need that physical one-to-one observation to see what someone's doing?
So there's a lot of really good tools out there. I wouldn't say they replace observations, but they can enhance or provide those observations. So you mentioned eye tracking.
Yeah.
If you're designing a website, particularly if you're designing like an e-commerce site or a site where you want people to perform an action, watching where people's eyes scan the page can be really helpful in understanding whether or not they're reading your content. One of the biggest learnings from that, every time I've used those tools when we're doing web design, is how little people actually read on the page. You look at the page and you see the little hot spots where their eyes are looking. They're reading your headlines. They're reading the first couple words in each paragraph. And then they're kind of skipping down to the pictures. You'll see in eye tracking software, if you've got a face on the page, immediately everybody goes and looks at the eyes in the picture, and then they scan the rest of the face before they do anything else. Like human beings are, evolved from our old caveman selves. Like if you see another person, the first thing you got to do is figure out, like, do I have to fight this person or my friend? Like, what's going on? Like you immediately instinctually want to see the face. Then you check out the other stuff. And that can be really helpful because that tells you don't spend a lot of time worrying about your long copy, maybe cut it shorter. One tool that I love, and there are organizations out there like Full Story, for example, that will track what a mouse is doing over the course of a session. So you can't really sneak through the web and see somebody's eyes, but you can look at where their mouse is going and what they're clicking on and what they're doing. Those can be really useful if you've got, say, a form that's hard to fill out or a password reminder process that's difficult for people to do, because you can record a couple of those and you don't even need a lot. Then you sit down with the engineers and the designers and the product managers and everybody else and say, hey, I got something to show you. And when people watch another person struggle with something, even if they find it really easy themselves because they've done it 100 times, it builds this empathy where you're like, oh, we got to fix that now. Like, God, that's painful. It's embarrassing. It's hard to watch.
Yeah.
And you can build that empathy with some random person that nobody's met. That can be really compelling for helping us design better software for our customers and users. So,
by the way, in the way you told that story, I think every copywriter died inside just a little bit.
I love copy. We've got a really robust content strategy team. But again, your point is understanding where should you be putting your efforts? Where if one of the writers is going to go do an hour of work or a day of work or a week of work on something, how do they know that they're making the biggest difference they can with their efforts? So if we give them the tools and the feedback and the guidance, then they know where to focus. Like, hey, people are struggling here. Well, let's go fix that.
So what are some of the things that you're seeing that general truths, I guess, about UX? We always hear like you should make fewer steps to complete things, but we already talked about it before. Enterprise tools tend to have multi-step functionality. Like it's really difficult to remove steps. We hear about removing steps, removing things higher to the fold. What are some general truths that you've heard that are maybe are still true today? And then I'd love, because what I'm getting at is because now the mobilification of everything, right? Where now it was in the early 2010s and 2010s, weird to say that, but in the early 2010s, there was like, predictions that mobile would take over desktop. Well, that's already happened. Like e-commerce traffic is like 80% now mobile, right? And so there's also there's grow, I think for the most part, people still work from their desktop computers, but I do know there's certain fields of people that are, they're doing more on their phones all the time. And like, there's demands of mobilized software, more all the time. I'd love to hear like some of these truths fading away? Like is is something replacing what used to be like a solution in UX UI design? I'd love to hear like your general perspectives on how we as people are evolving or products are evolving so that what used to be like, I remember, I'll give you an example. Like someone told me like an accordion tree was a good way to organize information, but now I'm seeing like at our company for our files, we don't even organize folders anymore because search has become so
Search is
prevalent.
great. Yeah.
Like we number them. Like we just number the files, and like you don't need to know where it is. Just search the file number.
As long as you got
right
a
up.
good search. So
Yeah.
you got a lot to dig into there. So let's start with that thing about like number of clicks and finishing stuff, right? I want to get through stuff as quickly as possible with as few clicks. And that's one of those things that seems 100% true on the surface. And is true a lot of the time, but not all the time. So I'll give an example of booking a plane reservation. Right? When my mom goes to book a plane reservation, it's going to take her about an hour and a half. All of it. She's going to take a break for a snack partway through. She's going to go need to talk to my dad. She's going to text my sister. She's going to think about it for a bit and go back to the computer. She is not trying to get through that as quickly as possible. She's trying to get through it as confidently as possible. When she's done, she wants to know in her heart that she did get the best fare, that there's not a shorter flight, that she couldn't have gotten a better seat. Like she wants to be super confident. So you want to design a tool for her, like a lot of these online reservation tools that I'm sure you've used, that maybe there's a bunch of clicks. Maybe there's some are you sure's and confirms and things like that to get through it. But you want her to feel confident the whole way through, because the moment she starts to feel nervous or dumb or she can't do it, she's going to bail. And now you've lost that customer. You've lost that sale. If you're planning a business trip and you talk to the travel agent at the reservation place because you don't want to go book it on the phone, you want to get on and off that call as quickly as possible. You don't want to spend a lot of time. So you don't really care how hard the tool is for the person to use. You want them well trained and you want them to move through it pretty quickly so you can get off the phone and go someplace else. So my mother could never use the airline reservation system that reservation agent uses because it's all hotkeys and secret codes and this and that. There's no pretty pictures. It's there to use super quickly. And that reservation agent, if they were sitting down on Kayak and clicking through that and reading you stuff, you'd lose your mind and you'd hang up the phone because it would take them forever.
Yeah.
So
I know you're talking about all the keystroking.
Yeah, but they also don't, right?
What about certain things that people used to implement a while ago? It seemed like there was all the rage of like hovering tooltips, but then like mobile came about and like hovering, people don't hover anything.
Well,
I don't know.
The phone doesn't know where you're hovering your finger.
Yeah, exactly. Those are, I'm just thinking of like some of the different UX elements that have now, they've just kind of fundamentally changed. Do you have any insight or some of the things that you're seeing that are pretty unique or pretty interesting as emerging UX trends that like it's showing that people prefer these techniques over?
Let's talk about mobile
ways
for a minute, because there's a shift that's been happening for, I don't know. I'm sure the people who started thinking this way a few years ago would say it's been going on for 3 years. There are others who haven't tripped over it yet at all who are going to say this is brand new. But tablet applications are evolving. So it used to be tablet applications were a lot like your mobile app. People walked around, they held their iPad or their tablet in portrait mode, tall and skinny, and they poked it with their finger and they did stuff that felt very mobile-y. So people designed tablet applications either as just giant versions of the mobile app, or if they designed a specific tablet app, it felt very mobile-ish. That's changing because now many tablet users have got a little keyboard. They're holding the tablet in landscape mode. It's plugged into the wall. It's their little mini laptop. They're using a keyboard. They got a little trackpad. So if you got a mobile app on your tablet, it's going to feel awkward in that case. So now a lot of things, if you go and you look at some of the bespoke tablet apps, they look a lot more like a web app or a software application than they do like the app on your phone.
Oh dang, man, I didn't even realize that. I was thinking as you were talking, I was trying to think like how many people I see carry around tablets, and like I know tablet sales have declined, in relative comparison to like notebooks, and obviously mobile sales are through the roof. But it's pretty interesting, like even when like new fads come in, how quickly they fade away. What about some? I'd love to hear your perspective on this because so at Inside Mission, we always have this debate as well. So there's UX and there's of course UI, and what is beautiful doesn't necessarily function. Now I always point to Amazon.com, which of course grows more. Amazon sells more merchandise than just about everywhere, right? Yet if you ask anyone, does Amazon beautiful? I've never met anyone that says Amazon's beautiful. But Amazon's freaking
it was. Go back to the Internet Wayback Machine and take a look at Amazon and 3 years ago, 5, 10 years ago, and you'll see some ugly.
But Amazon
you
works.
ever use Craigslist?
Craigslist is another company that does like $1 billion plus, I think, and has like their UI. Very few people would say it looks good. Let's just put it that way.
Very few people would say it looks like it's been designed at all. Like I don't think that UI has been touched since 1995 when Craig threw the first version up online.
Reddit's another one.
The thing that it's supposed to do, and that works. So
yeah.
There's a really good discussion in there to unpack, and I think the short version of it is if you build a software application or a tool or a website, a web app that solves an interesting problem or an important problem for people, they will use that tool no matter how difficult it is, no matter how ugly it is, to get stuff done, right? So, if you build a website called fill out this form and I'll ship you free beer, you don't need a really good, easy to fill out form because your value proposition is pretty strong, right? Now, if somebody comes along with, we'll ship you free beer and we won't make it hard, well, you're going to lose your market share because they're going to go off to the better app. So job number one, if you're designing an app, is make sure you're solving a problem. Make sure you're solving a problem that somebody's got. Even better yet, make sure you're solving a problem that someone has and that person's got some money and they're willing to give it to you. Then you can start worrying about how well you solve that problem. But the world is full of beautiful apps that don't do anything useful, and nobody uses them.
When we named a couple of those companies, Amazon, I personally don't think it looks that good. I'm sure someone thinks it's great, but I still purchase from it because you said it's got to be useful. It is very useful for me to look up whatever products I want, compare prices, get exactly what I need. And plus I trust their customer service. So it makes it easy for me to buy from there. When we used Craigslist, that's an interesting one. I can't explain why I still use Craigslist, but every now and then I just feel like I do check it out. Reddit is another application that doesn't feel like the other social media platforms. It's got more of I don't know. It just feels older. Like the UI, the interface just looks older and older style, but obviously Reddit is
immensely popular. It looks like a couple of engineers designed it 10 years ago.
Yeah, maybe 15 years ago. I don't know exactly when they put that thing together.
Reddit's got the content you want, and they do a really good job of surfacing the stuff you're interested in. If you're getting the emails from them, like they know exactly what kind of cat video you want to see, or whatever it is that you're looking at, and they bring you into the site, and you're not thinking, "Do I want to see a beautiful site?" You're like, "No, I want to see that video of the eagle grabbing the fish out of the fisherman's boat because it's funny," or like they got the features you want. Where companies like that are at risk over time is if somebody comes along and does a better job of doing the same thing they do.
Mm-hmm. So, let's take it back full circle to your space. Your space is highly competitive. Online collaboration, enterprise collaboration, communication tools. It's not going away. Big players enter it all the time. So how do you think about it from your perspective? Obviously, UI and UX are important, but I'm sure you get requests often. They're like, "Hey, I want to design this beautiful thing," but if you probably know, I'm sure if it doesn't work quite like the way the user expects it, maybe it doesn't get shipped. I'd love you to kind of talk about your experiences in this field, because you are correct. If someone comes along that can do the same thing but delivers it in an easier, more beautiful way, they have a chance of disrupting you. You're in a highly competitive field, lots of players in it. Everyone's trying to get their look down, their experience down. Talk about how you guys attack this problem and this challenge, this market challenge.
Yeah, so there's kind of a hierarchy in there. The first question is it functional? Does it do the job you need it to do? And if it doesn't do the job you need it to do, you're not going to use the software. And that doesn't mean it's a bad tool. It just might not do the thing you need it to do. Right. So if you need to have an online meeting, Microsoft Word's not going to work for you. It might be a great word processor, but it doesn't have the features you need to have a meeting because it's not the right tool for it. So if you and me are going to start a new online meeting company, first thing we got to have is the ability to broadcast audio and video. The quality's got to be there. You got to be able to connect. The meeting can't crash, right? It's got to actually work. The next piece of the stack is, the usability. How easy is it to use? Can you schedule the meeting? Do you have a good integration with my calendar? Do you have a good integration with Google Docs so that I can post an agenda into the meeting and everybody can know what our meeting is so that we have a good meeting? That starts to drive preference, right? Like the first one, go to the enterprise, right? IT says you have to use this for your meetings. And all right, it works. I'll use it. The functional is when you start to get a choice and you're like, well, this one's easier for me to use than the other one over there. And once everybody has got functional, then the sort of the enjoyable, the craftsmanship, the delight that might come out of the more visual design things could start to be a differentiator. But, again, the most beautifully designed app that doesn't do the job it's supposed to do, it'll look good in a coffee table book. It might win an award, but people aren't going to give it their time or their money.
Yeah, that's a great way to frame it, right? UI will get someone to give you a shot. UX and functionality are going to keep people there. Like no one's comes back for the UI if the other two things aren't true. No functionality. Yeah, exactly. It's a bad experience. They ain't sticking around. When in your space, there was a rise and ascension in the last 2 years or I guess it's been happening for a while, which is B to C to B growth. So companies that build business, they really want business to business applications, but they kind of sell it at the consumer level. Slack is one of them, right? Where people use it at a consumer level and then it rolled right back somehow up into corporate giant companies. Box did it this way, Dropbox. They all kind of had this B to C to B model. What is it about user experience UI? Because I can't put my finger on it. I don't know why people start trying new tools. Like I don't, because some things people don't really try, but what are they do? What are some of the things that you see these companies doing, or you yourself at RingCentral are constantly thinking about doing? Because it seems to be a very good sales strategy. If you can get people to love the application in a lightweight way, they can bring it into their companies, spread it further. I didn't know if you guys ever think about launching features more like how these companies have done it. I'd love to hear your perspective on this, because this type of salesmanship, B to C to B, didn't exist. I mean, it didn't exist certainly in the back when I first got in the software game in 2006. Everything was just straight up enterprise, AEs, deals. No one cared about the experience, function, get it sold. So
I think what you're talking about in there, and you're right, Dropbox, Box. Yeah. Evernote tried. Zoom is a great example when everybody was using WebEx and Zoom came in. RingCentral does the same things where we try to innovate in our experiences to displace the incumbent products or to get in early in a new organization so people get used to our tool. And it goes right back to that stack that we were talking about, right? Functionality, usability, and then that desirability, the craftsmanship that's there. So, you're in an organization, that organization is using whatever tool and it does the job. Take the meeting software. You got your meeting software product. Everyone's supposed to use it. It does the job. You're in a meeting with a partner or somebody else internal or somewhere, and you're like, God, that meeting experience was better than the company standard. I'd really rather have that. It works. It does all the functional stuff. But it was easier for me. It was easier for me to schedule. I had a different feature in that meeting that I really liked. With RingCentral, our push there is integrating your messaging and your meetings and your phone all in one app, so you can kind of switch between them. just a side detour there. One of my favorite features in the RingCentral app is that you can move from your desktop app to the phone with a click. So, here we are, we're having this meeting here. I'm not going to do it in the middle of the podcast, but, maybe I got to get up. I want to go to Pete's and get a cup of coffee. With a RingCentral app, I just pick up my phone. I open the app on my phone. It knows I'm in a meeting. It gives me a big button that says, you want the meeting here? You don't even know I've moved to my phone. Hop in my car, go to my CarPlay, drive, get my Pete's, go back, flip it back to my computer, and nobody knows, right? Or maybe I'm late. So I take the call on my phone, we're in the meeting, and then later I get onto my desktop and do my screen share, and you don't see us moving back and forth. Go on.
Yeah, so you don't get like the double screen effect. 'Cause I've done that where it's like I'm running late, I'm on whatever call, and then when I get to my desktop, I of course will log in. But then there's that split second where I'm in there twice.
Wow, 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 feedback.
Yes, the echo chamber. Like
everybody knows that you were late, right? So, we want to say, like, I don't care what device you're on, you ought to be able to do anything you want. So make phone calls from your computers, take meetings from your phone, send messages while you're in the middle of a phone call, et cetera. It's all there. But your B2C to B thing. So, maybe you're in an organization that's using a competitive product. I can't think of any names, but, something out there that people use. And you start to see this RingCentral experience is a little better. It helps you get something done that you couldn't do. Maybe it's a little easier. Maybe it makes you a little more effective. So you start using that one. That's what you call that B2C. That end user chooses the better app. And then eventually more and more people in the company are using that app. And the IT department says, wait a minute.
What's this?
How come everybody's using that new app? And then they switch over. So that kind of give people what they need in terms of experiences is a great strategy for any organization, big or small, that's trying to get out there and do good things.
Yeah. And how about internally, when you guys think about how to implement features, that's one of the things that's you mentioned earlier is like, your enterprise, you got thousands of customers. That means all the time people are asking for things. Mm-hmm. So that means your real estate on your screen, we know it's limited. We know people can only process so much information. Give us an idea of some of your methodology you use to get these things inserted. Because if they add features, like, give us an idea. Is it a bunch of A/B testing across different environments? Is it focus group testing? Like, how do you ensure that you don't lose usability when adding features? Because there's plenty of features to add, and you already know this. If you stuff them all on menu one, you will lose customers for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So the answer is we use all those tools. So early on in the first question is kind of like, which feature should we be working on? We got a long backlog of stuff. And there's a heuristic we use for that, which basically boils down to how big a deal is it for how many people and how hard is it to solve? So, if it's a big deal for almost everybody who uses the product and it's pretty easy to do, like, great, that goes to the top of the list. That's pretty easy. But you want to make sure that you're doing the most good for the most people with something that you do. So now you've decided, these are my top 5 things I'm going to work on this quarter. We use design and just iteration on that. So the first thing is just like, all right, I want 10 ideas on how to do this. 10 different designers, 1, 2, 3, go. Come back and they share their ideas with each other, and they all see something in somebody else's idea they want to steal, or one of them's like, I don't like my idea anymore. I like hers. I'm going to take hers and I'm going to mush it together with that. And they go out and they come back, and they go out and they come back. And pretty soon you've narrowed it down to a couple of good ideas. And it's not anybody else's idea anymore, right? It's all everybody throwing something in the pot. Then when we've got some good hypotheses, guesses, then we can go out and we can talk to people in some pretty low fidelity ways really quickly. And that's where you discover that this thing that totally made sense to you makes sense to nobody else. Then once you get more confident in your design, you build like a higher fidelity version that you could go test. And then eventually the highest fidelity version is when you build it and you put it in the product, and then talk to people as they actually use it, or measure the clicks, measure the usage, and circle back and say, well, I was hoping that 25% of my users would use this feature in their next meeting. All right. How many used it? How often did they use it? Did they use it twice? Did they just use it once? And then, more often than not, you're going back to the drawing board because everything's an evolution.
Yeah. So give us an idea on each stage, like how much success has to be true for it to move to the next stage. Because you mentioned like at each stage you're measuring the fidelity. Like, is it like 60% of people have to be using the feature the way it is designed? 70%, 80%. Give us an idea. What does success look like to you guys?
It depends on what kind of experiment you're trying to run. So if we're trying to decide like what's a better color palette for the product, we might go out there and get some feedback and learn that like nobody wants to see pink on orange. But all right, you're going to have people that like blue, people that like purple, people like something else, right? You're not going to get everybody to agree on that. So great. Make a decision based on whatever. If what you're designing is the login screen, well, probably something close to 100% of the people really ought to be able to get through the task. and if they don't, you don't have it right. So it really depends on the feature. The other thing is kind of, do you want them to be able to figure it out right away? Or is this something that can be learned? Like you might not be able to figure out how to integrate your calendar with something without kind of thinking it through. It's not going to be immediately obvious. But if you're going to send a text message, probably 100% of the people ought to get it right the first time.
Okay. That makes total sense. And the way you describe that, now I'm thinking about the people at CAPTCHA, and now I'm thinking they want me to fail. Because I've noticed that CAPTCHAs are getting like increasingly hard.
Yeah, well, the AI can solve all the easy ones. They're going to you for the hard ones.
Yeah.
Although I got to agree with you. I think sometimes I get it right and they just give me another one because they can.
Yeah. They're just working me too hard. Exactly. You'll see like which one of these has a tree. It's like that tree is clearly kind of in the third pane, but it's not fully in the pane. Should I select it?
It's like which of these have got a stoplight in it? It's like, well, the pole's in this one. Like, does that count? Does it not count? I don't know. I'm so stressed out.
I know, man. CAPTCHAs are getting super hard. I wish they could just tell me to, I don't know, just put my thumbprint. I can't wait for those days. Michael, man, it's been awesome having you on IT Visionaries. You've shared quite a bit about how you go into making decisions, how you stack rank priorities. It's been a lot of fun having you on the show. But before you go, it is time for the lightning round. The lightning round is brought to you by the Salesforce platform, the #1 cloud platform for digital transformation of every experience. Michael, this is where we ask you questions outside of the world of work so our audience can get to know you a little better. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, we checked out your Twitter profile. It says you're a kite surfer, or you say you're a kite surfer. Are you actually a kite surfer?
I am actually a kite surfer.
Oh, man. Do you do flat water, or do you actually go in the ocean and surf the waves with the kite?
So I'm more of a flat water chop rider. What gets me going are the big air tricks, the inverted tricks, anything that sends me 50 feet in the air and slams me down into the water as hard as I possibly can. That's what I'm going for.
Dude, that is impressive. So you do these aerial tricks?
Yeah, that is I saw somebody, I was driving down the coast one day near Waddell in Santa Cruz, California. And I saw somebody jumping on a kite and like, I stopped the car. I got out, I stood there and watched and said like, I got to have a piece of that. That was almost 20 years ago.
Okay. So anyone who's ever watched kite surfing videos or seen it on YouTube or anything like that knows that there are epic fails when it comes to learning how to kite. Have you ever had a massive fall in kite surfing?
Oh, well, yeah. If you're not falling, you're not trying hard enough. The trick is to not fall on land. The water's a little bit softer.
I've seen some people when they're learning get dragged through the sand. I've seen some people get way too high. They came down and luckily didn't get injured. But I always thought to myself, like, man, this looks pretty darn dangerous.
It is. I will say that it is a lot easier to learn than it looks.
What else besides kite surfing do you enjoy doing? Because that seems pretty extreme. Your design UX by day, when you can, your kites, not just kite surfing, you're doing aerials, which is a whole nother level of bananas. What else do you like to do?
Well, I got 4 kids, so that takes a bunch of my time, going from 21 to 8. So there's always something to do there. 3 girls and a boy. So when there's a dispute to mediate or basketball to play or, sitting around having a tea party with the 8-year-old, there's something there to do.
I have 3 kids. They're all closer in age, but I agree. I feel I'm at the age. At least some of yours can drive themselves. I'm driving my kids everywhere. My wife splits time. Like sometimes I don't even know how we're doing it, but yeah, it's pretty intense.
I don't know how people did this before Google Calendar and being able to kind of track everything and know who's where.
I don't think they did. I think they just didn't do that many. I was asking the same questions. Like, I don't think I was enrolled in this many things. Like, I just think parents just didn't do it.
You couldn't do it. I just remember as a kid, like, there was always that risk that you're going to end up standing wherever you were, and it'd be like 6 o'clock, and then my dad would come rolling up looking all flustered because like nobody read the note on the fridge to get me at 3.
Yeah, exactly. You were given a quarter. You're like, hey, this is for you. Call me. What if you don't pick up? It's like, oh, well.
I'll call again. We don't have answering machines.
Yeah, exactly. You've kind of hit on a bunch of fun things. So you're kite surfing, you're a family man. Give us an idea of, what it is. What other things do you do to learn the stuff that you know? Because like that's one of the cool things about UX or UI is like it feels like there's a lot of research. How about reading? What do you read to learn more about your field?
There are a lot of great design books out there. If I'm going to make a book recommendation out to your audience, it's not going to be a design book. It's going to be a career book.
Okay.
There's a woman out there named Patty Azzarello. She's written a book called Rise and another one called Move. Either of them are basically hacker's manuals for your career.
Okay.
So as you're moving in your career, if you're thinking about becoming a manager or a team leader, or you're recently a manager or a team leader, that book is amazing. I've given away easily 100 copies in my life to different people on my team. As far as how I learn, I'm incredibly blessed. Like I get to go out there and look for and hire the best and the most interesting people I know, give them hard problems and watch them solve those problems and learn from them. So, like I said, we got about 100 people on this design team around the world. Every one of them is smarter than me. Every one of them is a better designer than me. And I learned something from every single conversation. And, I don't know where else in the world you could go get 100 teachers.
Yeah, I don't know. How about for personal application, personal product usage? Is there anything that like where you've used lately? You're like, wow, the UI UX on this is just butter. We always hear buttery UXs, I think is the term that people love saying. But is there any application or any new software that you've seen that's just like blown you away?
I don't know if there are any apps that have just blown me away on the craftsmanship level. I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on in online collaboration. Whether it's, tools that give you a meeting space, kind of an always-on meeting, tools like Miro that let you do whiteboard kind of collaboration and Canvas collaborations. We're using Miro all over the place, not just for work, but, even in family planning stuff. We're going to put together a big kind of like camping trip with all the cousins and everything else. And we got to figure out like who's going to be in what campsite. So, people don't intermingle too much and who's going to cook what and the other thing. So we got all the, the people from the, my 80-year-old mother-in-law down to the 15-year-olds who are going to be helping with the cooking all on a Miro board, rearranging stickers. It's great.
And there's no problems in usage from you mentioned that age spread, right? From grandma to the kids, everyone's using the product, no problem.
Everybody can figure out Miro. Yeah. You copy a Post-it note, you type on it, you change the color, and you go put it near some other Post-it notes. It's it's a very easy physical metaphor, just like doing it in real life. Nobody needs any training.
Well, if that's not high praise, I don't know what else is. Michael, thanks for joining us today on IT Visionaries. Thanks for sharing some of what your team's up to, how you guys prioritize, how you guys test, how you guys ship product. It was awesome having you on the show. And if I see you out there kite surfing, I expect to see some tricks.
Oh, definitely. Come by and get a lesson.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us today on IT Visionaries.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.